Please be seated. Well, good to be with you all this morning, and love those words. You are the salt of the earth, you're the light of the world. And those are the words that we're going to be thinking about this morning. One of the ways in which I like to describe what we do in church is to imagine it as being something like the warm-up that a team might do before a game. I coached schoolboy cricket and schoolboy rugby for longer than 25 years, I think it was, something like that, and loved it. And for the half hour or so before the game, we'd do our warm-up, we'd do our stretches, we'd do a few quick drills, and then as coach, I might, or the captain might, just go over our game plan for the final time. And then I'd say, all warmed up? And they'd say they were meant to respond, all warmed up with great enthusiasm, all ready to go, all ready to go. And then I'd say, game on, and they would run onto the field. And what we do in church can, in one sense, be seen to function like that. It's the warm-up before the game. Come together, we're reminded of the game plan, and then we leave. We run out into the world to play our part, to do our bit as best we can in fulfilling God's great game plan, which today we hear described in terms of being the salt of the earth and being the light of the world. We're in that section of Matthew's Gospel that records the Sermon on the Mount. A while ago, the ABC did a survey they asked Australians, and there weren't a lot of people who responded, to tell you the truth, 5,000 or so, but they asked Australians to nominate what they considered the world's most unforgettable speeches. First, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. Probably no surprise there, Martin Luther King Jr., of course. Second, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for justice. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted for upholding righteousness, truth, and justice. The unforgettable opening of the unforgettable Sermon on the Mount, which Australians voted in second in terms of memorability. And the brief section we have before us today suggests that it indeed has been remembered and is very familiar. We use the phrase salt of the earth, don't we? We might describe someone in this way when we mean, gee, they're good to have around. They're the sort of person you may not really notice, but things would not work so well if they weren't doing what they're doing without a fuss, without wanting recognition, without bragging about it. It's a compliment that we make, isn't it? Being described by someone as the salt of the earth means that you're a person who's reliable, who can be trusted to get things done, to get the things done that need to be done. Quite achiever. And I can think of many people that I'd love to describe as being the salt of the earth, people in this congregation, people elsewhere as well. It's a phrase that still has currency in our language, in our lexicon, in our day. Similarly, you're the light of the world. Way back in the immediate post-war period, Prime Minister Ben Chifley made a classic speech in which those on the Labor side of politics have latched onto and made a bit of a mantra in the last 70 years. Drawing on his Catholic upbringing, Chifley picked up on those words from the Sermon on the Mount, you're the light of the world, and called upon Australians to work hard to create a country that was worthy of the sacrifice that had been made in World War II, worthy of the 39,000 who had paid the ultimate sacrifice, given their lives, the 20,000 who had spent time in prisoner of war camps. And he called upon Australians, and he called upon those in the labour movement to create a post-war Australia that would be the light on a hill. And those words, as I say, have been taken up over the years, over the decades by many people, and in our own day by Anthony Albanese, our own Prime Minister, in very recent days. And my point is simply that the words that Jesus spoke way back then are words that we're still used to hearing in some way, shape or form. They're unforgettable. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Words addressed originally to those who had left everything behind to follow Jesus, his immediate disciples. But not just to them. Also addressed to the crowd that had gathered around him, so intrigued were they by what he had been saying and what he was doing. So let's take each of those phrases, try to spell out a little bit more what it might mean. Were we to understand them as a description of who we are and what we are called upon to do and to be. You're the salt of the earth, first of all. In Jesus' time, salt was pretty indispensable. It was used, still is, as a preservative for all kinds of food. Remember, no fridges back then. Salt was also used, and again still is, as a key ingredient for drawing out flavour. Salt preserves. Salt flavours. I find it interesting that in the Old Testament, when an agreement, when a covenant was being made, salt was often part of the occasion, part of the ceremony, a way of saying, as we come together to form this covenant, to reaffirm this covenant, we will preserve it. We will maintain this arrangement, this deal. We will cherish it and take care of it. We'll be loyal to it. And salt was there, part of that. Again, I think that preserving aspect, salt preserves. You're the salt of the earth. You're to preserve that which is good and right and true and beautiful. You're to maintain what is well ordered, to protect it from decay and from descending into chaos. You're to add flavour. The way that salt has a culinary effect on amplifying the taste of the herbs and spices in all kinds of dishes, even if you may not be noticed, because salt does what it does without being visible. You're the salt of the earth, says Jesus. And you're the light of the world. Like a lighthouse, we've got them in our South Head area. You're to show the way forward, a safe way, a good and sound way. I should have mentioned earlier that little children's song, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. It actually originally was a gospel song, I guess a children's gospel song. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it under a bushel? No, I'm going to let it shine. Don't let Satan blow it out? No, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine all the time. Let it shine. It's a pushback against our tendency to hold back, to play safe, to keep quiet, to withdraw, to opt out. And no, says the song, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. No, says Jesus, you're the light of the world. You have something to contribute. You have a role to play, something to do, to bring light and hope and joy and peace. You can show the way forward. You can show the way forward. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. Each and every time somebody speaks out against that which is unjust, unfair, not right, or speaks up for an ideal, lends a helping hand, cares for somebody in some practical way, exercises leadership that empowers and enables others, establishes a business that offers employment and jobs and provides good service for customers. Every time somebody writes something that's good and beautiful and true, every time somebody's active in research and contributes to the body of knowledge, every time somebody proves a faithful friend and true, a faithful partner and true, is welcoming and generous and hospitable, every time somebody offers a prayer for someone in need, or shares their faith in a way that's open and honest, every time somebody stands up and confirms their faith in front of friends and family. In all these ways, and so many other ways as well, as people do this each and every time, they send forth a tiny shaft of light which builds and combines with other rays and forms a beam of hope that brightens the world. You're the light of the world. 3 years ago, February 2020, a tragic accident took the lives of 4 children. It was a hot Sydney summer's day out Parramatta Way, Oatlands, and the children were walking to the shop to buy ice cream when an intoxicated, drug-affected driver ploughed into them after he mounted the curb in his four-wheel drive Mitsubishi as they walked along the footpath, killing Anthony Abdallah, aged 13, Angela Abdallah, aged 12, Sienna Abdallah, aged 8, their cousin Veronique, and injuring others. It was horrific. And the parents of 3 of those children who died, Danny and Layla Abdallah, responded immediately, you may remember, by saying that they forgave the 29-year-old driver. In their profound grief, they were a light to the world. Last Wednesday, the 1st of February, 3 years on, was I Forgive Day, a day that was set up in the wake of that event. There's freedom in forgiveness, were the words that were spoken on that day. A day in which people were encouraged to find someone to forgive, a day on which people were encouraged to find somebody that they might like to ask for forgiveness. Should have said earlier that Danny and Layla Abdallah are Christians. They're seeking to live as followers of Jesus. And they recognise how hard that is and just how difficult it can be, the whole process of forgiveness. Forgiveness is the greatest gift you can give yourself and others, they say. The more you practice it, the better you become at it. They're the words of those heartbroken, salt of the earth, light of the world, parents. We come together in church today. It's a little bit like the warm-up before a game. You hear the game plan. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. And then we go out into the world to live as best we can, doing what salt does, bringing what light brings. All warmed up, all ready to go. It's game on when we leave here shortly. May God strengthen you and enable you as you seek to do His will and to walk in His ways. Amen.